I mean, there's obvious similarities, but obvious contrasts. So what have been the similarities in picking up mixed martial arts, other than like the beginner aspect of like, hey, I'm starting something completely new, like bringing me back to my early 20s in bodybuilding? What else do you find similar between the two pursuits of like, comparing your road to mastery with bodybuilding, whether it's like habits, whether it's lifestyle, or whether it's, physicality, engagement, discipline? Like what are things that you're picking up like, oh, actually this reminds me of? Because all I'm imagining is, because fighters have fight camps and bodybuilders have preps, and I just can't wait for you to be like 16 weeks out. I was like, Fouad, that's not how it works. That's not how it works in this world, bro. Like 2 weeks out.
No. I've what similarity? I think the biggest similarity and the thing that's made me fall in love with it is it's every day.
Sure.
Right? It's not like I think you can say that for any sport, right? But like, what are you doing? You want to play catch? Sorry, guys. My dog's
this is the best episode of all time. I've never been happier on a podcast. Just so we're clear.
Anyways, so I guess the way I relate it is this: if you're playing football, and I could be wrong for all the football players watching, but if you're playing football, you have an off season.
Yep.
Right? You have time to like relax, or you can eat whatever you want, do whatever you want. I guess you could say that you can eat whatever you want in MMA because it's not about your physical look. But the point I'm trying to make is, so I go to class twice a week, and obviously the more mat time you have, the better you get, the faster you get, better. And so I was thinking about going to 3 days a week. But the point I'm trying to make is, even on my days when I'm not at class, I'm here. And even after weight training now, I'm like, what can I do every day to get better when I do go to class? So it's daily on my mind. There's never like, I did this practice and now I can go away and do something else. That's kind of how bodybuilding was. Like every day, what could I do to be a better bodybuilder? So I'm kind of in the same world now. I'm like, okay, maybe today I'm going to do interval sprints on the treadmill, or maybe today I'm going to skip rope for half an hour, or maybe I'm going to hit the bag for 10 rounds. Like whatever it is, I'm trying to like put all this together into a package, which is kind of like what you do in bodybuilding.
Do you think that end road makes it different? Because you said you got out of bodybuilding and you're like, people, and it's such an ignorant thing for people who aren't athletes to say to an athlete, like, oh, just put all your energy into this. It's like, there's no more depressed person on the planet that I run into than an athlete that's just had to retire.
Yeah.
Like my ex-wife was an Olympian. She hurt her hamstring, couldn't compete in Sochi, and like she went through it. It was her whole life. That was her whole idea. It was her whole identity, right?
Yeah.
And it's a logical person who might not be an athlete would look at your situation and like your eyeballs, the business prospect with the podcast and the supplement company, and be like, man, if you sunk every waking thought into business, look out. But the thing that business doesn't have is a finish line. It doesn't have the day where you show up and do the thing. Do you think that has to do with a little bit about why you've kind of taken to this, like, hey, yes, it has a novelty factor of being a complete beginner again, but it also has a consequence. Like I'm going to show up and there's going to be quite literally a judgment day. Like, do you think, because an outsider would look at your business prospects coming out of bodybuilding and be like, man, it's in a real good spot, really well connected, really well respected, a winning pro bodybuilder numerous times over, can talk, podcast is going well, like the perfect storm, and you're like, yeah, waking up like Gary Vee and like, doing, you're just like, okay, that's cool, whatever.
Okay, so the first thing you said was something about business not having a finish line,
right?
Which is 100% true, but business does have checkpoints, or I don't know if you want to call them checkpoints, but small goals that you can win, right? So there is finish lines I've put in place in my mind. I want the business to do X million dollars a year, this year, that year, whatever. So at the end of every year, you have a checkpoint as to your progress and how you're doing. Or for example, the podcast, I want to have this many downloads a month. I want it to look like this. I want it to feel like this. Whatever you have things that you can put in place that you can set as goals, the same you would as like reaching a show date. So it's not exactly the same, but there's a way you can play that game in your mind. I think the biggest thing is the singular aspect.
Right.
Bodybuilding is like, I know people say it's a team sport because you care, your wife is there to help you, or your friend, your training partner is there or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really you. Because even though people are helping you in support, you're the one eating, you're the one training, you're the one with the discipline. If you have no discipline and you're cheating, even when no one's watching, it's going to show up. So all of it is in your mind, in your body, and what you're doing. And yeah, you take energy from the support systems around you, but at the end of the day, it's on your shoulders. That doesn't happen in business. You have employees, you have partners, you rely on other people, you rely on suppliers, you rely on manufacturers. People don't do things at the same speed you do. People don't do things with the same heart that you do. It's not something you can control. I know people think that if you're a CEO or you're an owner, you can control your business. You can't. You can only leverage how big you are. If you're if you're a $100 million company, you can call a supplier and say, work faster.
Yeah.
If you're a new company, you can't do that. So now you're at the whim of people you're working with. And even if you could do that, you have, even if everybody around you is working at the same level you are, you're still sharing responsibility, which is nice, but it doesn't fill that other void, right? And the podcast is kind of the same thing. Yes, I'm the host, but I have other guys that do it with me. I rely on the guests that come on. And it's not an athletic endeavor either, so it kind of takes that away. So there really wasn't anything. There was no way to fill the void. And the starting from zero, I know the other aspects start from zero, but it's like this athletic thing that you have no idea how to do. But you can also see yourself being good at it. It's that those two things are important, because I could say, well, I want to just play basketball because you're horrible at basketball. But I could never see myself being good at basketball, so there's no point. Whereas I could see myself potentially being good at jiu-jitsu or being a better boxer or whatever, right? Like, I'm not saying UFC level, but like I can see myself learning the discipline. So you have to be able to see that in your mind before you're willing to put your heart and soul into it. So the singular aspect of MMA is what makes it different from all of these other things. It's just all on your shoulders and all about your discipline and what you're willing to give to it.
You mentioned like the shared responsibility that comes in business, and like even if you're $100 million in the bank, you can't just lean on a supplier and be like, yo, dude, like the creatine should have been here yesterday. Like, what are we doing here? I'm going to go with buddy Jerry down the street.
Yeah.
Has that been difficult? Like, I mean, you had such exposure to the supplement industry at large and the media stuff. Like, I mean, your stuff that you were putting up during your career before you switched to like media focus without the bodybuilding, like you had exposure to this. Mm-hmm. Now that you've like really kind of dove in head first and like monetized it, and this is the business, and it supports dozens of people's lifestyle income every day. It's like, what are the big lessons you're learning in really going from, okay, every day I wake up and I do this thing for 20 plus years where I'm in the driver's seat, variables are well and truly known and under my control. And then transitioning to the point where every single day, I mean, outside of what you're doing in mixed martial arts, but you now have the majority of your focus on the business end, what makes you money, is no longer in your grasp. Is no longer fully in your grasp. What have been the difficulties that you're like, okay, this is going to suck, this is going to suck, this is going to suck, and what have been the things that like kind of blindsided you and like, really shifting from bodybuilder to business owner?
The two biggest things, two largest hurdles, and they're very extremely large because they're characteristics of who I am. Patience, which I have none. And if you ask me, if you spoke to me business-wise 3 years ago versus now, I'm a completely opposite person. Because when you're in bodybuilding, like you said, you're in the driver's seat. So if you want something, you just go get it. You're like, I want to put 5 pounds on my bench. Okay, I know exactly what I have to do. I'm going to start today. I'm going to measure it in a month, whatever. Or I want to lose 20 pounds. I know exactly what I have to do. I'm going to get on the step mill. I'm going to cut my calories, whatever. And in a month, I'll be 20 pounds lighter or whatever, 2 months, whatever it is, right? That doesn't work like that in business. You can say, I want this product to be here in 2 months. I've made the date. I've agreed with this person. We have it all forecasted. And then they're like, well, this happened, that happened, and now it's 3 months. And then they're like, oh, the labels were wrong, now it's 4 months. And you're like, inside, you're stewing because you're like, we had an agreement. This was supposed to be 2 months. We made the date. I was in control, you were in control, we talked, it doesn't work like that in real life. In real life, in real business, there's always hurdles, and there's a fire to put out every day. And you're constantly like, you have to First of all, you have to, well, this is a separate point. I'll stay on the patience thing. So you have to always be like, I know I said 2 months, but it might not be 2 months. So this is something I had to learn, because I used to get really upset. And then there was this is part B. Emotions have no place in business. This is something brand new to me, because I'm like, if anybody who knows me knows I'm extremely emotional. I'm intense, I'm angry, I'm like, the highs are high and the lows are low. That's who I am. So I'm like, oh, I can't get emotional because somebody didn't meet their deadline. I have to just figure out a way around it. So like, emotion has no place in business. So that was the second lesson I learned. Third lesson I learned, probably one of the biggest also, is ego. Zero ego. My name, that's my name. So my name is on the company. I don't own my company. I do in paper, but I don't make all the decisions. I mean, yes, I have final say, but I'm not in the weeds day to day. There are people doing things and making decisions sometimes that I'm not involved in. There are meetings that I'm not involved in. There's phone calls I'm not on. My wife does a lot of work for the company. Like, this was something I had to like let go of. I'll give you an example. First 6 months we start the business, I would get mad if there was a meeting and I wasn't involved. Why wasn't I called? You guys had a meeting without me? Do it again.
It's a design call. Right. What do you know about design? Website.
I want to be on the design. That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Rich at the end of the table.
Right.
It's like, what are we talking about?
It's a. Well, I'm talking to the webmaster about the website. No, I want to know. This is the immaturity of not ever owning a business, and this is the ego of saying, well, my name's on the banner. That means I get to be part of everything. It doesn't work like that. It took me about 6 months to a year to learn that you stay in your lane. You do what you're best at and get the fuck out of everybody else's way so they can do what they're best at, and that's how the company will function. So that's what I've done. So if you look at the day-to-day operations of the company, there's meetings I'm not involved in, there's calls I'm not on, there's manufacturers I don't even talk to. But I want it that way, because I realize that there's other people that are better at doing things than I am. So this was a huge learning experience for me, because bodybuilders are all egomaniacs. So to go from a sport where you're the center of attention and everything is in your grasp to being like, oh, I don't have control of all this, is like a huge fucking learning lesson.